Awesome. Well, thank you for having me here today. I apologize in advance if I get our internet's a little wonky today in the Canadian countryside. But today I'm going to be talking about Ladies of Landsat. It's an organization for networking and connecting women in remote sensing. And so our aim is to make the field of remote sensing more equitable and inclusive for underrepresented scientists. And what you see here is our logo with Landsat 5, sorry, and then on the left are a LiDAR scan of some of our members at a forestry conference a few years ago. And some background about myself, I'm a PhD candidate at McGill University in Montreal. I use Landsat and other moderate resolution sensors for mapping fire progressions. And so this is a fun presentation for me to give because I usually am only talking about my research, so this is great. So just as a brief history of where we're coming from, Ladies of Landsat was started by Kate Fickus when she was in her PhD at Oregon State University. She was in a primarily forest remote sensing lab, and so felt very isolated, often was the only student, especially the only female student in her lab. Kate went to ForestSat 2016, a conference that was held in Santiago, Chile, was able to connect with many other women in remote sensing that she hadn't met before. Part of this was that it was one of her first international conferences and the first international conference for a lot of the other women. And so they got together, they did a Wonder Woman stance to kind of increase their confidence going into their talks and said, "You are strong, you are special, and we believe in you." Going forward a couple of years, Kate started this Ladies of Landsat Twitter account after going to a bunch of different Landsat science team meetings, connecting with some women in the field, and saw a niche basically for connecting women scientists in remote sensing. And this was done especially with the allyship of Mike Walder, who's another science team member, and all the Landsat science team generally. I met Kate at the Earth Engine User Summit in 2018 in Ireland, where we had kind of a Gals of Google Earth Engine and Ladies of Landsat get together. And then since January 2019, I've been running the Twitter account. Once Kate finished her PhD and moved on to a government job, then we kind of shifted gears, and I'm based outside of Montreal, Canada. So these are all of our organizers. It's not just Kate and I. So here's Kate and I when we first met in Ireland. It was really wonderful to finally meet someone from Twitter that I had been talking to for a long time. Michelle Stuhlmacher has been helping a lot with the Ladies of Landsat Manuscript Monday series that I'll go into. Andrea Puzzi-Nicolau she's done some talks for us, such as at AGU 2019. She's a really wonderful volunteer. Megan Halabisky is a research scientist at University of Washington and has been a huge mentor throughout the process of Ladies of Landsat. Agnes Faulkner is based in the UK, and she's been helping as well with the Ladies of Landsat Manuscript Monday. And then Flavia Mendez has been helping with one of our new efforts that I'll describe a little bit later. So here's a couple of our meetups. We've had a bunch of in-person networking events at conferences and other workshops. This was that Earth Engine User Summit, again from 2018. We had a Women in ForestSat at the ForestSat 2018, and this was a really wonderful experience for me. We had a night of networking. I was able to meet Joanne White and Jody Vogler and some other forestry remote sensing scientists that I really looked up to. At Geo for Good 2019, we held a GeoMeet event, a networking event with Women in Geospatial Plus. It was a really great turnout, and Rebecca Moore, the director of Google Earth, joined us for a bit. It was really exciting. Kate has been continuing to go to the Landsat science team meetings, and more there's more women attending and participating in the science. And then this past month at Geo for Good 2020, we had a Geomixer networking event with Severe that was open for everyone. So you can find us on Twitter. This is our account. We tend to post a weekly series, like I said, Manuscript Monday, that I'll highlight on the next slide, I think. And then we also retweet our followers. We share job ads, we share research opportunities and new papers. And Kate really started it as a celebration of women in remote sensing. And Since this last summer, the Sisters of SAR group, we often work alongside our sister group, you could call them. And they post similar things. They have really wonderful series every week about researchers who are using synthetic aperture radar in their research and work as well. And so to give you some background about the Manuscript Monday series, often folks would say to me that they only know research from a handful of women in remote sensing, which was kind of shocking, but when I started my PhD, I think it was similar as well. So they list the same names, usually from North America, especially from the United States, and that's about it. So we started this weekly Twitter series to post on Monday mornings in October 2019. You can see some of the examples to the right as well. Kate goes in there and folks from all over. And so we highlight cutting edge research in the field of remote sensing from around the world. And the purpose of this is, our aim is to, it's a pretty big aim, but I think we're doing it, to reduce the proven citation gap between genders. And one of the ways to do that is increase visibility of women-led research. And so we take both nominations from folks, from people in their lab, but also self-nominations are really encouraged because self-promotion is really important in science. Another newer effort that we have is the Discoveries in Remote Sensing section of MDPI's Remote Sensing. So this is a new and inclusive section in this journal. It has an all-female editorial board with personal or research ties to nearly every continent. And basically how this started is that Remote Sensing approached us asking if we wanted to do a women in remote sensing section. And the 7 or 8 of us got together and we're like, well, it's not just women who need inclusivity and support in remote sensing, it's really folks around the world. And so we wanted to kind of shift the aim of this section to highlight all research from all over. And to do this, we have an action plan to ensure diversity, equity, and inclusivity in remote sensing, but also the publication process. So for example, one of the things that we do is we have a get one, give one system where if someone from a wealthier lab is able to pay for their submission article processing charges, we then get a waiver from MDPI that we can give to someone who's unable to pay for their fee charges. And so there's a couple other things in our action plan, like English editing support and give preference to articles with diverse perspectives, multidisciplinary approaches, and inclusive authorships. It's been a really neat project to design an entire section devoted to this. And this is, who doesn't love babies? I guess this is just to lighten the talk. This summer, we have a lot of moms in remote sensing. And so to kind of highlight all these efforts from women who are mothers and fathers, of course, we have this onesie that we've been selling, just where money goes to support some of our members as they have abstract fees and other sorts of things. And so an upcoming effort that we have is the Geomixer monthly series. It was a one-time networking event that we held at Geo for Good with Severe, but we're making it a monthly networking event with rotating time zones, so folks from around the world can attend. We're working in collaboration with Sisters of SAR and the ISPRS Student Consortium. And basically the setup of this is that we use multiple rounds of breakout rooms in Zoom to randomly connect participants. So you'll be in a room with about 3 or 4 other people. For about 10 minutes, you get to know them. We come back to all in the same room, and then we send you out to a new breakout room and you meet new people. And as I think GeoMob knows, we've had to be really creative about networking in these COVID times. And so this was one way that we were thinking we could recreate those in-person networking events that we've offered formally in person from conferences and other workshops. And so our aim is for our first Geomixer event to be in mid-December, but keep an eye out on our Twitter page for that. Another upcoming effort that we have is that the USGS Human Dimensions group, they've been creating these graphical recordings to include the story of how Ladies of Landsat formed, interviews with Landsat users. So these are 2 examples. One is with Jill Dines and the other is with Africa Flores Anderson, basically describing how they got into research with Earth observation and how they use Landsat in their research. And it's really neat. Every frame is drawn out by this artist. It's been a really incredible collaboration with them. Another efforts are conference symposiums. Obviously, as scientists working primarily in academia and government and some industry as well, we go to a lot of conferences. So this is one session that we're leading at AGU with some folks from Severe, the Gender and Social Inclusion in Climate Data Services and Analyses. This will be next month. It has a really great lineup of early career scientists that we've invited and folks from around the world just talking about what they're doing to make their climate data services and analyses more inclusive. And then also pending in-person events. It was already postponed once, so we'll see. We're working on a joint session with the ISPRS Student Consortium, a Women in Remote Sensing session. And this is highlighting, this will be at the ISPRS World Congress this summer, highlighting women in remote sensing from around the world, talking about their journeys in remote sensing and how they've got where they are today. So if you want to learn more about us and some other awesome groups, highly recommend that you check out the ISPRS Student Consortium newsletter from April 2019. It was entirely devoted to women in remote sensing and geospatial information. There's a Ladies of Landsat feature, but also some really additional sections, including an interview with Dr. Barbara Ryan. I also appeared on Seen from Above. Andrew and Alistair interviewed me I guess a year ago now. And so I talk a bit about Ladies of Landsat, some of the other groups, and also about my research just a little bit in Google Earth Engine. And last year, I also wrote an article for the Keyword, Google's main blog, just talking about what Ladies of Landsat is doing and highlighting some of the groups that are doing similar work. And this went into a second blog about Google Earth, in Google Earth's Medium page about what are these different groups. There's Women in Geospatial Plus, Women in GIS Kenya, Geo Latinas, and so this is a follow-up article, if you will. And thank you so much for having me. And if you want to get involved or reach out or become a member, you can just find us on Twitter. Great.
Okay, Morgan, thank you. Thank you very much. So a question for you here. There's a general diversity challenge in tech. I think we all know this, we all recognize this. Are there specific factors that impact the remote sensing community?
Yeah, I think remote sensing is such a interesting field because it's really a crossover with so many other fields. There's engineering, there's computer sciences, there's ecology, there's forestry, there's ocean sciences. So it can really vary depending on which part of the remote sensing niche you're in. Coming from a forestry and fire ecology background, when I started my PhD, I was the only woman in my lab for the last 10 years because it's a computational landscape ecology lab. So it was very different from coming for other folks who might be starting maybe in a social ecological research realm with remote sensing. I don't think that it's necessarily like just, I think that tech broadly has this challenge and GIS fields as well have this problem, but I think remote sensing, because it is on this kind of computational interface, it can mean that a lot of women are not necessarily staying in the track of their PhD. They might leave earlier, So I don't think it's alone to this field, but it's definitely a challenge.